Hello, everybody. Welcome to the session. Um, um, I will leave you with the speaker, Tomas Svoboda, sorry. And please leave any questions in the chat. He will reply to them after the session. We will leave 5 minutes and enjoy the session. Yeah.
Thank you, Yao. Hello, everyone. This is Tomáš Svoboda. I am affiliated with Charles University and now speaking from Brussels. It's a genuine pleasure to have you all here registered and online in this session. I will cover the topic of artificial intelligence, which is on everybody's minds when it comes to translation and the future of the profession. Let me share the screen right now. So here we go. I will talk about translation, what we can expect when it comes to artificial intelligence beyond its translation functionality, and I'll also cover the topic of CAT tool integration. I will assume that everybody is familiar with the notions of CAT tool, computer-assisted translation tools, and what's the difference between a CAT tool and a machine translation engine. A machine translation engine is something that translates for you if you paste text in the system or you have the system run through your text, whereas a CAT tool is an integrated environment where you have the functionality of translation memory and terminology management. I will refer to my personal experience with one of the tools that I use mainly so far, or I have experimented with so far the most, which is ChatGPT. I have led several courses on generative AI in translation. I had the feedback of translators who use it with different language pairs and directions. So please take my notes as general remarks. It does not pertain to English only or to Czech, which is my mother tongue. It's no systematic approach. It's more of a user's perspective. What's AI? Artificial intelligence is what we refer to as generative AI, more precisely, is a system that is fed with data, and generative means that it generates words. It works with language. It's based on language models. That's what we refer to as the large language models, LLMs. So it works with language, and the system simply uses a neural network to predict the most probable word or phrase to follow something that has already been generated. So that's why we refer to it as a generative AI. Compared to it, the most common translation engines such as Google Translate or DeepL, these are engines that use a similar technology with neural networks, but are trained. These are neural networks trained specifically to a one exact purpose, and that is translating. So generative AI, such as ChatGPT, differs from that in that it's trained for many more purposes. So there's various engines, various systems out there, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, or Claude. It's a good idea always to experiment with the tools and see what works best for you. It's important to say the generative AI system comes with distinct shortcomings and risks that arise from those. It hallucinates, which means it can produce unrelated content. It is unpredictable. Uh, Even if you prompt it the best way you can, it always is unpredictable. And it comes with a bias, which means it simply cannot surpass the limitations of the data that had been fed to the system. Some of the data is toxic, some of the data shows cultural bias, and that's how the system mirrors or mimics the language usage it's been trained with. Remember always, before you would use such a system, that the data you feed in will be disclosed to the party, to the engine provider. Uh, so as for the risks, it's unreliable at times. Always make sure to check the results. Don't trust it 100%. And it also comes with environmental risks, which means that we're told that these systems use up large amounts of electricity. When it comes to translation, um, we can refer to the generative AI tools such as ChatGPT as just another empty system. For it to produce a machine translation output, you will need to prompt the system in a relevant way so that you can obtain the best results possible. There are prompting rules, and I'll share an example of how to prompt ChatGPT. Um, do you see the ChatGPT interface? Yes, thank you. So this is the typical ChatGPT interface. I have a check localization here. So I'd simply put translate the following sentence into German. Hello, it's a genuine pleasure to welcome you all to this year's TEF. And here's what comes out. So what I did is I prompted the system to use its translation functionality, and we can discuss, or you can judge the quality if you're a German native speaker. What I used was a very down-to-earth prompt, saying simply translate the following sentence into German, and that's what we call the one-shot approach. There are different views how to define one-shot, zero-shot, several-shot, etc. approaches, but one of them is that you provide no examples to the system, or you require the system to provide a functionality that it has not been trained with, etc. So it's getting complicated here. What's more, what the recommendations are is to either use a more refined prompt, such as what we call cascade prompting, or a comprehensive prompt, which will include things that I'm going to refer to right here. So you will have some more coverage of the prompting rules during the TEF, so I won't go into detail here. But it's always a good idea to start a new chat if you're requiring the system to start to cover a new topic. Remember to give the system a role, or what we refer to as a persona, saying, let's say you're a proficient translator from this and that language. Your task, it will be, etc. So that will be the number 3 prompt rule, task. If you want to use a cascade prompt, you would then insert so-called magic phrases or intermittent questions, saying you're going to translate a text from the area of newspaper translation. What are the specifics of newspaper translation, for example? By that, when inserting this intermittent question, you actually leave some space for the system to actually shift to an area where you want to have it and which you want to cover. Um, some recommendations say use structured lists, use expectations at the end of the prompt saying, I expect you, or the expected results is this and that. And remember, you always have the chance to regenerate the prompt, but I'd advise to experiment with it. If you're seeing poor results, it may be a good idea after 2 or 3 repromptings to start a new chat altogether, rather than trying for the 4th, 5th, 6th time to reprompt. Also, make sure to experiment with the prompting language. Some language pairs will show better results when you prompt it in English, some in other languages. So these were the translation functionalities, but the chat tool or the generative AI tool comes with a number of other functionalities, which I refer to as beyond translation. Of course, it comes with an image generator for specific versions of the Gen AI models. It's fun to experiment with. And people use it for literary translation purposes, this image generator, for example. And I'll refer to it at the end of my presentation, and this is what I'm covering. So I prompted it to show me a English Czech translator solving a difficult translation task. This was somewhere back in the summer this year. Interestingly enough, this translator sits surrounded in a study surrounded by books and nothing but books. I put a reprompt request, a similar image arises. When I said give me or generate an image of a female translator, here you go. And this was the regenerate result. It also is able, the system is able to produce a synthetic reproduction of the text that it had generated, sometimes useful. And let's look at the beyond translation functionalities during the process, before the process, and after the translation process. So let's start with the before aspect. You could consider having it analyze the text that you're supposed to translate. As you know, if you're translation students, you will always be required to think, to make your own translation analysis before you start translating. You need to familiarize yourself with the translation, with the source text, sorry. So for that purpose, the summary function of ChatGPT, for example, could be helpful. Just remember, don't feed sensitive material into the systems. You could use it for anonymization. However, if you use this third-party tool, again, you're disclosing the information, so it's of a limited use. Again, OCR means optical character recognition. I tried it in this aspect. It was not very reliable. There are other specific tools also using AI, but it was interesting to see that you could potentially refine the prompting in this aspect. If you have an image capturing some source text. More interestingly, perhaps, the functionalities when it comes to terminology. If in your translation, if the original text involves an image, you could feed the image into the tool and ask it, what do you recognize? What do you see? Give me terms of what you're seeing in the image. If you have a definition and you cannot come up with a term, it could be useful. You can always use AI functionalities in search engines now, such as in Microsoft Copilot. It could be useful when disambiguating terms, and I tried it when it comes to term extraction. But compared to human term extraction, the tool was far lagging behind. And let me show you MT customization functionalities when it comes to terminology. What I tried was having an original text here on the left, translated by ChatGPT. That's the second column. It's translation from English into Czech. And I thought, okay, I'll impose terminology on the system. So what I did, I used this prompt and fed or forced terminology onto it. It worked very good, very well. Out of the 7 or 8 terminology preferences that I fed in, it respected most of them, with the exception of 2. So again, not reliable 100%, but an interesting tool when it comes to MT customization. During translation, there are tools now available outside of CAT tools that help you rephrase texts, such as in Microsoft Copilot function. Here, I have a screenshot of what I have available in my mailer, for example, when using Microsoft Bing. So you can use generative AI to alter the tone, alter the format of the text to make it a bulleted list, for example, etc. You can alter text length. So you can use these functionalities if you need to summarize text, alter text length, rephrase, or simplify the text. Interesting features. Go ahead and test it. It also works very good with synonyms, collocations. You can use it for generating metaphors, something it produces non-existent metaphors, interestingly, so it is able to hallucinate efficiently here. And you can use it to disambiguate abbreviations or acronyms. Again, not reliable 100%. Make sure to check. After translation, I tested it when it comes to evaluating human translation. Didn't work so good. I compared 2 machine translations and wanted ChatGPT to tell apart which one is better. Didn't work so well. And I tried ChatGPT to revise a text, and it was a flop, a failure. It even put in more errors. So a very unreliable companion here. Spelling check, not so reliable, but perhaps depending on the languages. If you're using large languages, spelling check, grammar checker could be useful, but I think still the functionalities in Microsoft Word, for example, are much more reliable. Number check, so-so. And you could always check the content between source text and target text when it comes to summaries, etc. In literary translation, as I said, some people use it for the tool to produce a graphic representation of a scene in a novel, for example. But what I'd be afraid of would be that I'm losing my creativity when I ask the tool to provide me with a graphic representation. Not always. You don't always want this to be so specific. Chatbot training. You always have, if you have a paid version and you go to check out the GPT models, you have this section, My GPTs, and I experimented with producing my own translation engine, which was a very interesting experience because it actually guides you through the process by posing questions, and you should be well versed when it comes to translation studies here. Here, last few slides. Now there are uses in Trados Studio, for example, when it comes to CAT tool integration. It promises, the Trados Copilot functionality promises to feed customer terminology and even adjust the grammatical information of the terminology. So, for example, in German, it will also change the grammatical features. And there is a very interesting tool out there lately called Word Scope, which comes not only with a machine translation capability, but also here in the middle, you can see a ChatGPT button. And if you click that on the right, you will see all the ChatGPT functionalities predefined as predefined prompts. So you can always uh, alter the language of the resulting translation. So, to conclude, there are disadvantages, there are ethical issues involved, there are usage caps, there are costs to the tools. It's unreliable, but um, there is, of course, a bright future for translation. I'd recommend for everyone to highlight what your value is, add to it, and you will be thriving. There's Gen AI is not a bigger threat to the translation, and I'm sure if you find your niche and if you find your value, you'll be doing very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very informing, very complete, and yeah, let's move on to the questions from the chat. The first one, Jup Bindel says, "Thank you for this interesting lecture. What do you think of Gen AI integration into CAD tools with plugins or in MT tools, such as the recently released Lara system? And at which Another question, at which point in the curriculum do you think students should start learning to work with Gen AI in translation, also considering their focus on parallel processes such as foreign language learning and learning basic translation skills?"
Thank you very much for the interesting questions. Um, as for CAT tool integration, it's still in the making. What we've seen with the big developers such as RWS, it's still in some preliminary stages, whereas the WordScope software, for example, has this full-fledged functionality built in already. So within the free trial, you can experiment with that, how it works with your language versions. But I'm sure there's much more to come. I think all the CAT tool developers have focused on generative AI and Gen AI inclusion. So we're about to see much more integration going forward. When it comes to curriculum design, I am responsible for technology training in our translation department, and I have included ChatGPT into my curriculum already on the BA level. So I have my students in their third year of BA testing ChatGPT alongside other MT providers and also testing the beyond translation capabilities. And we're comparing ChatGPT produced MT, what it does when prompted in various languages with various prompts, etc. And foreign language, not so skilled here. I am not really experienced when it comes to foreign language teaching and translation capabilities. Mm, my suggestion would be to be cautious with the tools because one always needs to verify. So if I don't understand something, don't know about an area, I would be cautious to rely on the results that a Gen AI tool is giving me. Brilliant. We have tested this. It seems, but again, we're learning ourselves. It seems that if you prompt it in the source language, it will pay more attention mm, uh, to being faithful to the more to respecting the source language reality. If you prompt it in the target language, uh, it will try to be more fluent in the target's language. So it always expects a user of this or that culture background or linguistic background, depending on the language you use for prompting.
Okay, and we can now close the session. I don't know if you have any last remarks you would like to give, but I would like to thank you from all of us. It was very informing, and I guess if people have any more questions, they can refer to you directly.
That's true. Thank you for chairing the session. It was a pleasure and happy translating.